So can you retire or semi-retire in China? So I'm going to assume that you fall into one of the following categories. You're either an older bloke who's single, maybe recently divorced, maybe got a couple kids, and you engaged to or married to a Chinese wife recently, or planning to at least find yourself a Chinese wife. If you don't fall into that category, of course, you could also just be an older guy who's looking for a change, some kind of adventure. And even for the younger guys watching, if you're thinking about coming and living in China for any extended period of time, this is the video for you, because I'm going to discuss a lot of the pros and cons of trying to settle down here. So retirement naturally falls underneath that category. So why would you want to come and retire in China? What would be your reasons? Well, there are a good couple of reasons I can think of straight away. Number one is the cost of living. As long as you're not staying in Shanghai or Beijing or even Shenzhen where I live, cost of living is almost a joke. It's incredibly low. However, the bigger cities, sorry, I forgot to mention Guangzhou, and of course all the other bigger up-and-coming cities as well kind of fall under this category. The bigger cities can be quite expensive and at least comparable to what you're paying back home as far as rent is concerned. And of course you're going to get a lot smaller kind of a place for the same amount of rent. But what I'm trying to say is cost of living, such as rent, food, travel, you know, those kind of things, it's still very cheap in China. So if you're a pensioner and you've got a steady pension coming in every month, you'll be able to survive and live a much more glamorous lifestyle here in China than you would be able to, say, for instance, in the UK or the States. So the number one, of course, is cost of living. Number two is the adventure of it all. You know, that's something that can't be discounted. China is so different to what you're used to back home. I'm talking about things like the way people eat, the way people sleep, the way people enjoy themselves, hobbies. Food, of course, is a huge thing. Language is a massive thing. The way people travel, the way people see the world, the way people interact with each other. There's almost nothing that you can draw a proper parallel with in the Western world. So why I'm telling you this is going to give you a lot as a retiree, a lot of things to do. And at least, I'd say for a year or two, it'll keep you completely busy just discovering new things about the culture, discovering the way things work here, you know, going out and seeing something weird on the street and then trying to figure out what's going on there, you know. So as far as you getting bored as a retiree, certainly not for the first couple of years. So as a man, of course, there is an abundance of available women here. Now that might seem a bit weird because I'm sure you hear about this gender imbalance all the time. And it's true, there is a big gender imbalance, especially in the rural areas. Not so much in the big cities. In fact, Shenzhen, I think right now the women, there are slightly more women than men in the city at the moment. And when I got here 12 years ago, there were 7 women to 1 man. That's not a joke, you can look it up. Good times. Anyway, what I mean by abundance of available women, and I'll get to you, if you're a woman watching this, I'll get to you soon as well, is that China has this leftover woman concept. And especially if you're an older bloke and you're not looking for a crazy young person, because I think, you know, let's not go there, that's a different topic. But if you're looking for someone in your age group with about a 10-year plus minus age gap, so say you're 60, you're looking for someone who's 50. If a woman is 50 and single in China, that means she's got almost no hope of finding a husband. And this is just a sad reality. This comes from many different aspects that I've covered in my videos before. Basically, if they're single and 50, it means that they're, number one, divorced, and they probably have children already, and a divorced woman with children is absolutely a no-go for any Chinese man. A Chinese man, and his family especially, will not allow him to marry a woman who is divorced. Number one, it's really difficult. And number two, with children, that makes it like 100% more difficult. Sorry, 10,000% more difficult. So you'll have a lot of these sort of divorced women in their 40s, 50s, so on, who cannot find a husband here in China. So they very often go and look for foreign husbands, which is something I'm going to talk about a little later as well here. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons. The other reason why they might be single is because perhaps they're infertile, and here in China that's a big no-no again. If someone is infertile, then pretty much there's no reason to marry them. It's part of the whole sort of family unit, the sort of culture here. It's cruel, but it's true. And of course, there's another option. If the woman is very career-minded and has spent a lot of time on her career and never spent time on getting married, having a child, that kind of thing, that person is also very looked down on here in China and is also classed as a leftover woman. So you get a lot of successful women in their late 30s, 40s, 50s who are also single. So that's why, as a man, you will find an abundance of available women in China. Now, as a woman, you will find an abundance of available men in China simply because of the gender imbalance and all these strict social norms that prevent them from marrying leftover women. So, you know, you've got many more men than women in China. But the strange thing is, even though there are more men, they won't touch the leftover women. And they usually do things like go and find brides in Vietnam, things like that, to kind of balance things out. But that being said, you'll find a lot of young, professional, up-and-coming men here who are single. And so as a woman, it's very easy for you to find yourself a good-looking, young, motivated young man here in China as well. So there's a pro for coming here. Those are some of the pros, and we'll talk about more of the pros as we get through this. But of course, this is a Serpents at 8 video, so we have to talk about the bad things, because that's what I'm famous for. So let's get on to the bad things. And by bad things, I mean just the truth. A bad thing, which is also a good thing, is the fact that China's culture is completely different to yours. Like I said in the beginning, it's fantastic. You really get to explore and see so many new things, so many different traditions. Why do they do this during this holiday? Why do they drink that alcohol? Why do they eat that kind of food? Why on earth are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why do they have such hard beds? You know, etc., etc. So there's all these differences, and it keeps you entertained, and it's an adventure, and it's something that you can discover, and it's really, really a positive, honestly. But at the same time, it is a completely different culture, and they don't respect your culture over here. You've got to realize that in China, Chinese culture is the way to go. Your culture, yeah, they might think of it as quaint and interesting, but at the end of the day, you're in China, you have to do things the Chinese way, and you'll find this a lot with your Chinese in-laws. Yes, they may respect you, but they're still going to hound you and tell you to drink hot water and not to drink alcohol and not to do this and not to do that, and you must buy a house this or you must do that. And you'll find a lot of these very annoying pressures towards you, especially if you're an older guy and you've already established yourself in life. You don't want to be told what to do. You don't want to be told that you can't have your aircon on in the house because it's going to make your wife sick or something when your wife's in her 40s or 30s and you're, you know, up there in your 50s, etc. too. So, there are a lot of like negatives when it comes to the different culture. Of course, different culture means there are a lot of things that won't be compatible with your culture, such as just social etiquette. You really, really, really have to have a lot of tolerance if you're going to live in China, if you come from the West. Things like people cutting in queues, just personal space. I mean, right now, behind me and around me, people are busy getting their lunch from all these little food stalls. But, you know, people are crowding together, they're rubbing shoulders with each other, they're bumping into each other, they're spilling food on each other. It's for a lot of Westerners, fairly unacceptable and hard to swallow. Also, the spitting that you see a lot, the public urination, you know, there's all these kind of things, you know, the shouting in public, the general noise can drive, especially an older person, crazy, because you have to understand that unless you're in some kind of far-flung, small village, hometown area of China, you will not escape noise. There will always be construction noise around you. People like to shout and talk loudly. People talk loudly on their phones. People talk loudly to each other. And noise is a huge, huge, huge con. The next thing, of course, is just the freedom to be able to go where you want to and do your own thing is quite stifled here. Getting a car is not easy. I mean, if you're marrying a successful woman here, she'll probably have her own car, and that's no big deal, right? But getting your own car is difficult. You can't drive here without a Chinese driver's license. International licenses don't cut it, so you have to get a Chinese driver's license, which is actually quite difficult depending on your visa, right? So the ability to just hop in a car and go to the shops or something like that is pretty much erased. You have to learn public transport. You have to learn to either walk a lot, take buses, take trains, take taxis, things like that. So there's that whole personal freedom of just being able to go where you want is kind of taken away. And to compound that, as a foreigner, you can't buy train tickets or things like that online. Chinese people can with their ID cards, but as a foreigner, you have to go stand in queues, go up to a window and pay, money with your passport. And of course, the language barrier there can be a hassle. So just getting around can actually be quite difficult, especially in the beginning when you have no language skills. Because believe me, as much as China has been trying to make the cities more international, trust me, if you come here, you'll find out very soon that very few people actually speak English. Sure, younger people speak English more. Sure, in the first tier cities, you'll find more people that can speak English. But on average, seriously, I'd say all the people around me, I don't know if they can speak English. Let's find out. Hey man, can you speak English? No. No. You can't speak English? Okay. Can you speak English? Can you speak English?
I know English.
You know English? Okay, cool. How about you? Can you speak English? No? Okay. All right. So basically what I'm trying to say here is being able to speak English in China is, well, as you see just from this little sample of the 5 gents sitting around me, they're all young, and 100% of them can't. So, that'll give you a little bit of a tell as to what you're going to experience here. And I am in a first-tier city. So, you're stuck here with a big language barrier, and that can be a huge, huge hassle. But it doesn't end there. I'd say these things can be overcome because, number one, if you're a half-decent human being, you'll realize that you're in a new country. You have to learn the culture. You have to learn the language, at least to a conversational level, which is where I'm at. My Chinese, by the way, I know a lot of my subscribers see me speaking Chinese. They say, wow, your Chinese is so good, you're fluent. It's totally not. I don't put enough effort into my Chinese. My Chinese is at a level where I'm comfortable, that I can get around, I can communicate with people, I can get things done. But in all honesty, my Chinese needs a lot of work. But the thing is, I put in the effort because otherwise I would be incredibly frustrated, or I would have to rely on my wife or friends or co-workers, Chinese friends and co-workers, to do everything for me. And I just don't like being so dependent. I'm a fairly independent person, so that's why I learned the language. But what I'm trying to get at here is that you can accept all these differences in culture. You can adapt. You can learn the language, right? You can understand why people do things. You can start to eat the same foods, drink the same drinks, partake in the same celebrations. It's entirely up to you. And you can try your best to integrate. But what you will never be is you'll never be Chinese, right? That's something that a lot of us have learned the hard way. A lot of us who've put a lot of years and time into China will learn is that basically at the end of the day, you will always be a foreigner and you'll always be seen as a fresh off the boat foreigner. And it can be quite disheartening and it can be quite upsetting if you have spent a lot of time and effort trying your best to integrate into society here. Now that's not just on a personal sort of, I feel, upset about it level. This is actually on every level, and this is where it gets important. This is what I want you guys to listen to. As somebody who wants to come here and wants to retire, you have to understand that you will never be able to have a stable social system here. You cannot have a stable system, and I'll explain. Number one, visas. Okay. If you're married or you're getting married, you can get what I'm on, and that is a spousal visa. This allows you to visit your spouse. You're not allowed to work on that visa. You're not entitled to any kind of social programs, anything like that. You're basically, it's like an extended tourist visa. I get no benefits from that, other than the fact that I'm allowed to stay here and visit my wife. Like I said, I'm not allowed to work on that visa. I'm not allowed to invest on that visa. I'm not allowed to do anything. The only thing I can do is literally sit around, visit my wife, walk around the streets, take videos and things like that, which is what I do. Now, there is this legendary green card, which I put a challenge out to lots of people out there to say, show me one if you have one. And I did actually get some replies of people who showed me they had a green card. But basically all it is it's like a 10-year visa. Now this green card that they give out, which by the way, you won't be getting, It's the only way you can get it is if you've worked and lived in China for a long time, provided a lot of investment in China, like buying a massive house. You have to prove that you've got 5 years of paying tax to a certain amount, and you have to have had a certain amount of salary or a certain amount of investment over that time, and you have to have been married during that time. And there's a huge checklist. So if you're thinking of just coming to retire here, you're not going to get that green card, at least not in the beginning. If you stay long term, you might be able to. But that green card can be taken away at any point. It's written right there in black and white. It says that if you are seen to disturb the social harmony of China, your green card will be cancelled. And that's pretty obscure wording. It basically means that if they don't like you, you're gone. So you don't have any rights here. Also, you don't have legal rights in China as a foreigner. You will be treated, how can I say, as a second-class citizen in most legal disputes. And of course, if there is any kind of dispute, you will find, and I have found through my own experience, that Chinese people get the upper hand almost every single time. Of course, foreigners, on the other hand, also get a lot of bonuses when it comes to dealing with police and stuff, because a lot of the times the police, rather than not wanting to deal with you, will let you off with a slap on the wrist if you do something stupid like, I don't know, ride a bicycle drunk or something and they catch you, or doing stupid things like causing a ruckus or whatever. A lot of the times you can get off, but that's of course just up to official discretion and not always the case. Now, kind of along these lines is, I know a lot of the guys I speak to who come from America especially, they're quite used to being able to have control over their environment. I mean, if you live in a neighborhood and, I don't know, your neighbor's like a noisy dude or does stuff you don't like, you can actually sort of speak to the management committee or something and get the guy to change, or call the cops and get the guy to shut up, or, you know, if someone's doing something, you could do something about it, right? If your local council has installed speed cameras in your city, you can kind of vote and, you know, have them taken down, or, you know, there are ways to enact change around you, right? If there's a really ugly building in your neighborhood that's kind of bringing down the value of everyone else's building, you can go to the local council, you can kind of petition to get that building fixed up or removed. You know what I'm getting at here is basically you do have some control. In China, you have zero, nada control over anything. Remember, it's not a democracy, right? This is, I don't even know what to call it, really. It's sort of a socialist communism with Chinese, what do they call it? With Chinese characteristics kind of a thing. No one really knows what's going on here. It's incredibly capitalist, but it's weird and it's all over the place. But the bottom line is that you, as an individual, have no control and no say over what goes on in your area or in your living space. So you have to understand that you're going to have to let go of a lot of control, at least perceived control, that you have in the West. At the end of the day, it's entirely up to you. Remember, there is no solid visa program here. Even the so-called green card, even if you manage to get that, it's not a guaranteed. It can be taken away at any time. And that's something you really, really, really have to take into account if you're planning to move here and try to settle here. Every couple of years you're going to be stressing because your new visa's coming up and you don't know what new laws have been enacted, you don't know what's going to happen. And if your visa is cancelled or taken away, you have no right. So everything that you have invested in this country, that widescreen TV that you bought, the renovations you did to your wife's house, the car that you bought, all of that's gone to the wind and there's nothing you can do about it. So just bear that in mind. That's a big, 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 big issue. So one of my biggest issues living here for so long is that I've never been able to really put down roots. And as for me personally, the thought of retiring in China, well, I can't say I'm entirely thrilled about it. It's very far away. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? I will revisit that later when I'm at a retiring age. Now, I think it's important for you guys to actually hear from somebody who's actually retired and living in China. And I happen to be lucky enough to have gotten hold of another YouTuber here by the name of Gweilo 60, who lives here in China. He's retired, but he doesn't live here all of the time. He does, you know, move between China and Canada and the US, but he does spend a lot of time here in China, and you know, it's always better to hear from the horse's mouth. So he's helped me make a little video where he discusses Things like finding hobbies and how not to be bored, and exactly what it's like to be retired in China. So next time we're going to be discussing that, and I just want to say a massive thank you to him for helping me out with this. I'm going to leave a link to his channel below if you want to just go check out his videos in the meantime. But let's wrap this video up, and we're going to be talking to Gweilo 60 next time. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, at the end of the day, China is an amazing place. I've been here for 12 years for a reason. I love this country, I love the people, and I love the experiences that China has given me. So until next time, as always, you know the drill. Stay awesome.